So when Deion Sanders got to Colorado, he got a lot of pushback for the way he approached how he was going to build his roster. He told the players that were there after a 2-10 season and their coach got fired, I'm going to bring my own luggage, and it's Louis. Apparently, it's not, or at least a lot of the luggage ain't Louis, because what happened to Colorado after a nice start to the 2023 college football season didn't end up going so well. They were on top of the college football mountaintop there for a hot second until Oregon put a hurting on them. And since kind of that moment, things have not gone great for Colorado. Now, they have been maybe more effective than anybody in the transfer portal opening up this week, where a couple of their players got into the transfer portal and really didn't speak all that highly of Colorado and Deion Sanders in the process. They kind of went the opposite way, speaking highly of Deion Sanders. And I think when you come in and definitively make that statement, I somewhat defended Deion Sanders at the time, because coming in and saying, like, hey, some of you guys, like, I would encourage you to enter the transfer portal because some of you guys are not going to be good enough to play here going forward. And that's the truth. And if honesty is the best policy, I don't think you can knock it. Obviously, what they had done before Deion Sanders got there wasn't good enough. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been hired. They wouldn't have fired their coach if the status quo was good enough before Deion Sanders arrived in Boulder. So that it makes logical sense, and I don't think there's anything you can do to knock. Was it brash? Was it abrasive? Yeah. But if that's who Deion Sanders is, I think you should be who you are. I don't think you should change who you are to become muted as a college football coach. But at the same time, you can't speak out of both sides of your mouth. When Deion Sanders was asked about the players that have entered the transfer portal, a reporter basically said, like, Deion, you're losing potential starters in the transfer portal once it opened up this week. And he was like, no, I'm not. If you think those guys were potential starters, you haven't been watching practice. Essentially, it was those guys weren't even good to begin with. Now, this is like college football fan behavior. Anytime you pull somebody out of the transfer portal from another school to your school, it's like, holy cow, this guy is big time, real deal, baby. And anytime somebody leaves your school to go somewhere else, like, he wasn't even that good. Our coaches didn't even want him anymore. It's the same thing in recruiting. You get somebody that's a 4-star recruit, a 5-star recruit. You're like, oh my gosh, this kid is the future first-round NFL pick, first-round draft pick. Coaches are crazy for him. He decides to go somewhere else. Like, yeah, our coaches, they just weren't sure about him. Like, I literally, Ryan Montgomery is a 4-star quarterback who committed to Georgia. On Wednesday, he goes to a school about an hour up the road from me. And the amount of people on Facebook that I saw that were like, Ohio State didn't even want him. Is that why they offered him a scholarship? Michigan was never even an option. Like, they were the first. They offered him a scholarship when he was in 8th grade. The idea that just because he chose Georgia over somebody else, it's ridiculous. But Deion Sanders saying that the people leaving his program, well, they weren't good enough or whatever the case may be. Bro, you got heavily criticized for bringing these players to Colorado with you because you were insistent that they were the best of the best, that they were the top dogs, that the reason that they were going to make that jump with you was because of how good they were. And then the second that they don't provide you any more service, you then can't run them down. One, it's not a good look from a professional level. There's a reason. I think there are a lot of coaches when in a lot of situations that when a kid gets in the transfer portal, they would love to sit down in front of a microphone and tell you, this kid stinks. This kid's not as good. His work ethic is terrible. His attitude is awful. We couldn't get him to listen. We couldn't get him to do his assignment, his job, etc. and I talked about it last week, that there are times where kids are encouraged to enter the transfer portal. Kids are told you should seek opportunities elsewhere. And I'm certain that there are coaches that would love to sit down and tell you the God's honest truth and absolutely torpedo the future of somebody. Because it's that petty, it's that vindictive, and sometimes it's just that honest. You want to tell a coach who's looking at this kid in the portal like, hey, doesn't go to class, doesn't lift, doesn't work hard in the weight room, doesn't pass drug tests, whatever the case may be, but they don't. You know why? Because it doesn't look good. No matter how true it is, no matter what the case may be, it is not a good look to trash somebody on the way out the door. It's why you can't, like, people took issue to the fact that people were making fun of O.J. Simpson dying. O.J. Simpson, this isn't controversial. O.J. Simpson killed 2 people. Like, he murdered 2 people. But because it is deemed as classless to trash somebody on their way out, it's supposedly like you're not allowed to kind of dance on the fact that, like, dude, you decapitated your ex-wife. But that's the culture that we live in, that you just don't trash people on the way out the door. So when a couple of kids get in the transfer portal, now, and is it a double standard? Yeah, because these kids are 19, 20, 21 years old. They don't necessarily maybe have the greatest idea on what's the best item for decorum or etiquette. So if they trash Deion Sanders on the way out, it's different than Deion Sanders trashing them on the way out. But if you were so insistent that you told damn near everybody on the team when you got there to get in the transfer portal because I'm going to replace your ass with somebody who's better, and then when you don't play all that well from about week 5 on, and then those kids that you brought with you that were Louis say, you know what, hell with this, I'm out. You don't then get to be like, they weren't even that good. I don't even think they were that good. They suck. Well, bro, 10 months ago, 12 months ago, you were telling the world, anybody who would listen, that the best of the best was going to wear black and gold. It cannot be both, that anybody who wants to be with you rocks and is spectacular and awesome, and anybody who wants out sucks. It's not always black and white. It's not always 100% this or that. And it's okay if somebody says, you know what, I went to Colorado, it wasn't working out for me, so I put my name in the transfer portal, or I didn't like the role that I was going to be asked to play, whatever the case may be. I think that, and I've pounded the table for this, that college coaches in their press conferences, say what you mean what you say. If you think it, say it. That doesn't mean you're completely absolved from thinking illogically or thinking something that is wrong. But if you're gonna tell everybody, you're gonna tell the world, and you're gonna die on the hill that the luggage you're bringing with you is Louis, and then it just turns out to be the American Traveler brand that you bought at Walmart, like that's a you problem. That's not anybody else's. That's not the players not living up to the standard or whatever the case may be. You picked wrong. You decided to run everybody else out in exchange for your preferred people. And the second that they're not your preferred people, well, they weren't that good anyway. I don't think that's a great way to operate. I don't think it's a great way to entice kids to come to your program in the future either. And when the name of the game in college football in 2024 is recruiting, NIL, you're kind of playing with one hand tied behind your back. Now, Deion Sanders, I don't think, is going to have any problem still having the name recognition, notoriety from younger people, because the flash is still going to be impressive. The sparkle is still going to entice kids to come there. But at some point, you have to have some substance. And if your lack of substance is mixed with one, it's always about me. And two, if you're with me, you rock. And if you're not, you suck. People are going to see through that eventually. And that's not a good mixture. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content that we are pumping out here on Saturday Glory. If you are listening to the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a really long way in helping out the channel and getting us in front of more college football fans. And that's a really great thing. I will see you for another episode on Sunday here on the Daily Huddle with Saturday.